The LIV Golf is ambitious to say the least, and you have to agree that it's causing quite a stir in the golfing world. The CEO, Greg Norman, has no plans of sitting back and relaxing. He wants to expand. His next destination? Women's golf. Up until now, it was only the men making the news, but soon it'll be the ladies. And get this, the women's boss isn't against it. Let's get into it. First, let's see what Norman wants. So, on more than one occasion, he has confirmed that women's LIV golf is definitely on the table. In his interview, he said that there was no doubt they were close to doing something about it. A Greg Norman and ladies golf crossover, that sure will be chaotic. But at this point, just bring it on, right? The reason for this is that LIV Golf wants to make a permanent place on the golf scene, which of course means a power struggle between the PGA Tour and them. And as we've seen so far, there's no ending to this power struggle. Both sides are invested in it like their life depends on it. Now, the side of the battle needs to shift, or at least that's what the Shark thinks. Don't get us wrong though, the fighting on the men's side is still going on. It's just that Greg has exceptional stamina for feuds. Like, come on, the man stayed true to his beef with the PGA Tour for over 3 decades. Alright, with that in mind, let's go back to women's golf being the next battlefield for the golf dominance wars. He revealed that their team had actually had a very comprehensive meeting with one of the most iconic female golfers. He didn't disclose the name of this golfer because what's better than a little suspense, right? Anyway, according to him, this iconic golfer, whose name shall remain undisclosed for some reason, was game for the idea of LIV stepping into and bringing their formats to the LPGA, Ladies PGA. And of course, the money doesn't hurt. Norman did make some moves earlier, which according to him were rejected, but he was quite assertive when he said he ain't stopping. His goals spread the LIV footprint across the globe, and not just in one sector that is men's golf. So yeah, dear LPGA, honey, you've got a big storm coming. Next, let's hear from the ladies' boss. The commissioner of the LPGA, Mollie Marcoux, seems almost like the polar opposite of the PGA commissioner, Jay Monahan. How so? Because she's game. Yes, you heard that right. She doesn't seem to mind the concept of an LIV and LPGA merger or some sort of partnership. Our sources tell us that each time a piece of news like this breaks, one of the Jays in the parallel universes loses his wings. But that doesn't seem to bother Marcoux. Mollie said her reason for the potential cooperation is because she wants to work in the interest of women's golf and the golfers. So she doesn't want to miss any opportunities if they present themselves. But it isn't like she's all standing there with her bags packed to jump on the LIV ship the first chance she gets. She insisted that she cares about the LPGA, which is the only reason she needs to see and be honest about whether this whole concept would be beneficial for the sport. Still, as we said, she isn't ready to jump head first because that just isn't possible. She pointed out that players and sponsors would be a big part of the conversation. Why? Because the will of the players and the cooperation of the sponsors will ultimately decide if this business can be a real thing. Also, she wasn't always so eager to return Norman's call because earlier, the LPGA said they haven't had any talks with LIV Golf. Now wait just a minute, Mollie, because you know what? The LIV CEO told the BBC that both the Ladies PGA and the Ladies European Tour had rejected the offers they made. So could it be what the players think that has driven the commissioner to this point? Let's talk about that. So what do the ladies think? Turns out they're much more straightforward than the men's side has been about this. Take Cristie Kerr's statement, for example. She straight up said the entire tour would leave if LPGA was in the situation the PGA currently is in, and she has 20 wins on the tour, including 2 major championships. So when you're Mollie Marcoux and you hear her say they'll all pack their bags and leave, you take her seriously. But the reason for this is much different from the men's situation. Most of the women's golfers echo each other's thoughts, and it all comes down to this: women are paid ridiculously less than men golfers. Because, well, of course they are. And that isn't even it. They also don't have enough sponsors on the LPGA to support them. Angel Yin said she doesn't see how the money being invested in women's golf would bring any harm. She also talked about the pay gap and how they play a lot more for a lot less money. So obviously the LIV prospect sounds attractive. Ryan O'Toole's thoughts were very similar to Norman's. She thinks the tour shouldn't have a say in what career decisions their members take. And the young American star Nelly Korda said she wouldn't say no to a big offer. Brittany Altamore said something that reflected how different and incomparable the men's and women's circumstances are. She quoted McIlroy when he'd said that $100 million weren't going to change his life, so he didn't need to leave the PGA. Altamore said, well, a couple million are going to change my life completely. Women golfers have complained about the little purses and how much struggle that puts them through. So if they're offered more, or even if this pressurizes the tour to increase the women's purses, they'll gladly take it. That said, there are still some who don't think they'd want to leave, mostly because they think taking Saudi money would make them accomplices in the internationally recognized discrimination against women in Saudi Arabia. There you go. All things considered, you should now be able to see why the bosses think the LPGA is incredibly vulnerable right now, and that's why they've softened up a bit, most probably due to the pressure. But there's also something else. See, the reason the women's side of their room's so comfortable talking about this is that Saudi Arabia is currently, and has been for years, one of the biggest financial supporters of women's golf. Yeah, the plot thickens. Aramco sponsors a total of 6 events on the LET. Players wear the Saudi crests and everything on their shirts. And obviously, the prize money on the Aramco series is much higher than any other event. Oh, Aramco's the oil company of the Saudi Crown Prince. Yeah, the one who isn't really known for being a soft boy. The LET falls under the LPGA umbrella, so they're already kind of doing business with them. So why is it okay to have Saudi Arabia be the biggest sponsor of women's golf, but then there's the surprise Pikachu faces and the controversies with the potential LIV involvement? Well, that's for them to know and for you to wonder. Norman says all of this is because the PGA, and by extension the LPGA, want to monopolize golf and remain the only dominant circuit on the scene. About the whole Saudi money controversy, he mentioned in an interview that it was all hypocrisy. The PGAers have sponsorships that do about $40 billion worth of business with Saudi Arabia. So according to him at least, it isn't about human rights. It's about not letting there be competition. But of course, you'll hear different opinions on the other side. So if you're a golf fan, then just go ahead and listen to your own moral compass, assuming you have one. And yeah, may the best circuit win. Now in other news. First up, Bubba Watson said goodbye. The 2-time Masters champion and former world number 2 has finally joined LIV Golf after months of speculation. He'll make his debut, most likely as a team captain, in the September event of the LIV League. It's said that he was offered $71 million to join the Saudi-backed Rebel League, and well, he took it. And Charles Barkley has entered the chat. Charles Barkley, who's one of the 50 best NBA players of all time, spoke about the LIV Golf controversy. He did so after having dinner with Greg Norman. Ain't sus at all, man. Chances are, he's expecting to be offered a commentary position on the LIV's broadcast team. He said that if that happens, he'd love to do it along with his current job with Turner. About the blood money and sports washing narrative, well, he completely disagrees with it. Not with the Saudi money being those things, by the way. His point is that LIV isn't the only one to do so. We've all taken blood money, and we've all sports washed something. Your experiences aren't universal, dude. Don't drag us into this. Lastly, there's the rising 9/11 anger. As the LIV Golf keeps expanding, more and more families of the 9/11 victims are coming forward with their grievances. They're demanding that this league's expansion in America be halted. Also, they're angry at the players for taking blood money. And of course, Trump had to give his 2 cents on this. He said that nobody really got to the bottom of 9/11, so the anger's baseless. That's a wrap for this video. See you in the next one.